Blessed are the steadfastly enduring, they that are patient under ills and hardships, who lament not over anything that befalleth them, and who tread the path of resignation. Baha'u'llah. Tests are benefits from God for which we should thank Him. Grief and sorrow do not come to us by chance. They are sent to us by the divine mercy for our own perfecting. Abdul Baha.
Thank you. So today we're really happy to have Dr. Haideh Sabet, and she'll be talking about strengthening spiritual capacities in times of hardship. Dr. Haideh Sabet is a neurologist in private practice in Alexandria, Virginia, and an associate professor of neurology at Georgetown University Medical Center. She graduated from Cornell University with distinction with a BA in the biological sciences and completed her medical school at the Mayo Clinic. She then attended Georgetown University Medical Center for her internship and neurology residency and helped establish and completed the first accredited neurophysiology fellowship program there. She's a member of the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Fairfax County East and lives in Alexandria with her husband and son. So with that, I'll hand it off to Dr. Sabet.
Thank you so much. I want to begin by expressing my gratitude to the team of this forum for the opportunity to share my thoughts on how we can strengthen our spiritual capacities in times of hardship. Life presents with many challenges, whether personal, societal, or global. Hardship can test our patience, challenge our faith, and even bring moments of despair. Yet from a spiritual perspective, these difficulties are not without purpose. They are opportunities for growth, purification, and deepening our reliance on God. From the outset, I would like to share that there is no clergy in the Baha'i Faith. And so I offer my personal understanding from the study of the writings. If you would like to study these for yourself, I would suggest going to the website, baha'i.org, and from there, you can access all the writings that have been translated into English. Of note, the Baha'i writings have been translated into more than 800 languages. There may be times when we may fall short in how we apply spiritual principles to our daily lives. And in the Baha'i Faith, in order to help in our spiritual growth, we are asked to read the writings in the morning and in the evening to remind ourselves of the purpose of our lives. In the morning, to reflect on the day, as well in the evening by reading the writings again, to, quote, bring thyself to account each day ere thou art summoned to a reckoning, as stated in the book, The Hidden Words. It is up to each of us to search for the source of strength for our souls, just as we search for the best food to eat each day for our bodies. How we allow the light of God to shine within us will help us in our own interpersonal relationships and can guide us through the vicissitudes of life that we will all encounter. Baha'is believe that this progression of the human soul does not end with this physical existence, but continues throughout the span of our spiritual existence. We believe this progression of the development of our character, virtues, and souls continues for all of eternity as we reach closer to God. To help us understand the spiritual framework which we feel allows us to transform hardship into strength and growth, I'd like to share a brief introduction to the Baha'i Faith. The Baha'i Faith was founded in the 19th century by a man by the name of Baha'u'llah, whose name means the glory of God. Baha'u'llah proclaimed a divine message of unity, which includes three core principles: the oneness of God, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of humanity. He taught that all the world's religions come from the same divine source, and that humanity is evolving toward greater maturity with the ultimate goal of global peace and justice. The Baha'i Faith emphasizes the oneness of humanity, rejecting all forms of prejudice, the equality of women and men as essential to social progress. The two are likened as two wings of one bird, and that both must be equal in strength for humanity to progress. This is the first time in religious history that this is made a spiritual principle, and its establishment in the world as a necessary requirement for the unification of the planet. Another spiritual principle is the harmony of science and religion, seeing both as essential to human advancement. The analogy in the Baha'i Faith is, again, both are like two wings of one bird in order for humanity to continue to progress. In the Baha'i writings, it is said, quote, "There is no contradiction between true religion and science. When a religion is opposed to science, it becomes mere superstition. That which is contrary to knowledge is ignorance." Baha'u'llah's teachings provide a spiritual roadmap for facing the trials of life. He tells us that hardship and suffering are not meaningless. They are necessary for our spiritual growth. In fact, the very purpose of our existence is to develop virtues such as patience, fortitude, kindness, and detachment, which are often only refined through struggle. The Baha'i fast, which we are currently observing, serves as a powerful example of how difficulty can be a means of spiritual transformation. Right now, Baha'is around the world are observing this 19-day fast, abstaining from food and drink from sunrise to sunset. And while this is a physical act of self-denial, its true purpose is spiritual. It is an opportunity to detach from the material world and focus on our inner lives. There are, of course, exemptions, and you can find them in the most holy book for Baha'is, or the Kitab al-Aqdas. But for those of us who can take on the fast between the ages of 15 and 70, we spend these special days in our Baha'i calendar in the month of March, preparing ourselves for the celebration of the new year, which coincides with the first day of spring. Being vigilant about developing our ability to stay steadfast in our faith, even when temptations may arise, such as walking past a source of water to quench our thirst, or something tasty to eat to stop our hunger. Such discipline then naturally pervades into the rest of our lives, as we may be inclined to do or say things which may be contrary to the progress of our souls. As we talk about hardships, we cannot forget the example of Abdu'l-Baha, who was the son of Baha'u'llah, the sole interpreter of his writings, and the perfect exemplar whom Baha'is around the world look to for guidance as to how to apply the teachings to their lives. He spent 40 years of his life as a prisoner, banished from his homeland of Iran because of the decree of an oppressive government ruled by clergy, which continues to persecute the Baha'i community in Iran to this day. Abdu'l-Baha explained that fasting is the cause of awakening man. The heart becomes tender, and the spirituality of man increases. This is produced by the fact that man's thoughts will be confined to the commemoration of God. And through this awakening and stimulation, surely ideal advancements follow. So the fast is not meant to be a burden, but rather it teaches us self-restraint and reliance on God. Baha'u'llah says, quote, "This material fast is an outer token of the spiritual fast. It is a symbol of self-restraint, the withholding of oneself from all appetites of the self, taking on the characteristics of the spirit, being carried away with the breathings of heaven and catching fire from the love of God." By willingly embracing this temporary hardship, we also learn an important lesson. Our true strength does not come from material comfort, but from our spiritual connection to God. Fasting also reminds us of those who experience hunger, not as a spiritual exercise, but as a reality of life. Baha'u'llah warns, quote, "O ye rich ones on earth, the poor in your midst are my trust. Guard ye my trust, and be not intent only on your own ease." This call to social responsibility is a central teaching of the faith. Hardship should not isolate us. It should make us more compassionate, more generous, and more eager to serve. Difficulties in life can either break us or refine us. The Baha'i writings repeatedly emphasize that suffering is not meant to weaken us. It is meant to purify and strengthen our souls. I would like to share the example of the hardship that the Baha'i community in Iran is enduring at this very moment, especially the women, and show you a shining example of what strength under such trials looks like. Since the birth of the Baha'i Faith in Iran, it has been targeted by an oppressive government that continues to try to extinguish its light in its land. The hostility toward the Baha'i community in Iran stems from several key factors. The Baha'i Faith is administered by prayerfully elected institutions and has no clergy, emphasizing the independent search for truth as essential to the unification of humanity. It upholds the principle that divine revelation is progressive, meaning that God will continue to send his messengers to guide humanity for as long as humanity exists. Furthermore, it is the first religion in history to establish the full equality of women and men, a spiritual principle that directly challenges long-standing societal norms, especially in a country that continues to deny women fundamental rights. As a result, the Baha'i community in Iran has become a scapegoat, facing severe state-sponsored persecution. Thousands of Baha'is, men, women, and even children, have been imprisoned and tortured. They are systematically denied basic human rights, including the ability to marry, own property, seek higher education, find lawful employment, inherit assets, obtain citizenship, and even receive a proper burial. The Iranian government's relentless oppression of the Baha'is is a grave violation of human rights, rooted in both religious intolerance and a broader effort to suppress principles that challenge its authority. Baha'i students have been banned from education beyond high school simply on the basis of their religion. They have been taken to jail, put on trial, with textbooks of science, architecture, and literature as evidence of their unlawful acts, since it is illegal to educate a Baha'i in any form of higher education. As you may know, the Baha'i Faith states that universal education is a spiritual principle, and emphasis is placed on education of girls and boys alike. But if a family has only the means to educate one child, it must educate the girl first, because she will be the mother of the next generation. Despite enduring over a century of persecution, Iranian Baha'is have refused to respond with violence and outrage. They have instead focused on contributing to Iranian society through social and economic development initiatives aimed at assisting their fellow citizens. To aid in the education of Baha'i students who are barred from institutions of higher education, the Baha'is in Iran have established the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education, which is internationally accredited, allowing Baha'i students in Iran to further their education not only through bachelor degrees, but over the 4 decades, this has now expanded into master's levels as well, in ever-increasing choices of disciplines and vocations, with the help of hundreds of volunteer professors of institutions worldwide and those from within Iran, both Baha'i and Muslim alike, through collaborative efforts and the power of the internet. The history of BIHE is truly inspiring, and I welcome you to read about it online. This is the power of peaceful and constructive resilience in the face of hardship that neither takes on the character of the oppressor nor falls into apathy. In a letter to the Baha'i community in Iran dated March 2nd, 2013, over 12 years ago, the Universal House of Justice, the supreme, prayerfully elected international governing body of the Baha'i community, stated the following, which applies to us today. Baha'is are encouraged to see in the revolutionary changes taking place in every sphere of life the interaction of 2 fundamental processes. One is destructive in nature, while the other one is integrative. Both serve to carry humanity, each in its own way, along the path leading towards its full maturity. The operation of the former is everywhere apparent in the vicissitudes that have afflicted time-honored institutions, in the impotence of leaders at all levels to mend the fractures appearing in the structure of society, in the dismantling of social norms that have long held in check unseemly passions, and in the despondency and indifference exhibited not only by individuals, but also by entire societies that have lost any vital sense of purpose. Though devastating in their effects, the forces of disintegration tend to sweep away barriers that block humanity's progress, opening spaces for the process of integration to draw diverse groups together and disclosing new opportunities for cooperation and collaboration. Baha'is, of course, strive to align themselves individually and collectively with forces associated with the process of integration, which they are confident will continue to gain in strength, no matter how bleak the immediate horizons. Human affairs will be utterly reorganized and an era of universal peace inaugurated. Such is the view of history that underlies every endeavor pursued by the Baha'i community. To emphasize, Baha'is are asked to be uncompromising in their refusal to engage in divisive and corrosive partisan politics. Anything that divides us removes us further from attaining unity. But Baha'is will always remain engaged in unifying acts of justice. May we all be mindful of the gems we each possess in helping to bring about the peace we wish to see in the world, no matter how bleak our surroundings may seem or how small we may feel. There is a Baha'i prayer that states that, quote, "The confirmations of the Holy Spirit alone can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, and an atom into lights and suns." And so we are asked by Baha'u'llah to, quote, "Be patient under all conditions and place your whole trust and confidence in God." And Abdu'l-Baha also expands on this, explaining how suffering actually helps us grow. He says, "The mind and spirit of man advance when he is tried by suffering. The more the ground is plowed, the better the seed will grow, the better the harvest will be. Just as the plow furrows the earth deeply, purifying it of weeds and thistles, so suffering and tribulations free man from the petty affairs of this worldly life until he arrives at a state of complete detachment." He further illustrates this idea with the metaphor of a plant. He says, "Men who suffer not attain no perfection. The plant most pruned by the gardeners is that one which, when the summer comes, will have the most beautiful blossoms and the most abundant fruit." When we go through difficulties, we may feel as though we are being pruned, but just as pruning helps a plant grow stronger, hardship shapes us into stronger, more compassionate, and more spiritually aware individuals. If we are looking for an example of how to endure suffering with patience, resilience, and unwavering faith, we need look no further than Abdu'l-Baha's example. Despite the suffering of imprisonment and exile, he remained a beacon of kindness and service to others. He demonstrated that hardship does not diminish us, it strengthens us. His life shows us that trials can be met with dignity, grace, and unwavering faith. He teaches us, quote, "And the honor and distinction of the individual consist in this, that he among all the world's multitudes should become a source of social good." His example reminds us that the greatest response to hardship is to serve others. So how do Baha'is collectively do this? Well, anywhere you meet Baha'is around the world, you will see them engaged in all aspects of societal life. They are active, hand in hand with their neighbors, friends, and colleagues, to serve in children's classes, providing spiritual education to children of all faiths from ages 5 to 11. Helping to create junior youth groups between the ages of 12 and 15 to empower junior youth to be agents of change in their neighborhoods, schools, and communities. Hosting devotional gatherings to be spiritual havens for people of all faiths to come together and seek strength from one another. And organizing study circles called Ruhi classes, which provide a framework to combine the study of the text with acts of service and community development. This is how we can get through hardships, by joining side by side with each other in the path of service and loving encouragement. So how do we transform hardship into a source of strength individually? Well, we can turn to prayer. As Abdu'l-Baha encourages us, quote, turn towards God, supplicate at his threshold, and be filled with love for his creatures. There are many prayers on Baha'i.org that we can say for the redemption of our soul, for asking for forgiveness, for blessing our families and friends, for healing, and for strength in difficult times. We can also practice gratitude, as Baha'u'llah reminds us, quote, be generous in prosperity and thankful in adversity. We can serve others, for in doing so, we heal ourselves. Abdu'l-Baha stated, quote, be not the slave of your moods, but their master. But if you are so angry, so depressed, and so sore that your spirit cannot find deliverance and peace even in prayer, then quickly go and give some pleasure to someone lowly or sorrowful, or to a guilty or innocent sufferer. Take a box of cookies to someone you know who may be sad or may have just suffered a loss of a loved one. Go get a cup of coffee with an old friend. Seek out new friendships with those who may not be in your current circles. For when we are in the tide of giving and receiving, we will find solutions to our own problems just through the act of service, consultation with others, and seeking out new ways of thought. Baha'u'llah also wrote, quote, sorrow not if in these days and on this earthly plane, things contrary to your wishes have been ordained and manifested by God. For days of blissful joy, of heavenly delight, are assuredly in store for you. Worlds holy and spiritually glorious will be unveiled to your eyes. You are destined by him in this world and hereafter to partake of their benefits, to share in their joys, and to obtain a portion of their sustaining grace. To each and every one of them, you will no doubt attain. I leave you with this final prayer from Baha'u'llah, and I hope you remember it in times of hardship. He says, armed with the power of thy name, nothing can ever hurt me. And with thy love in my heart, all the world's afflictions can in no wise alarm me. this is the strength that I wish for each of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a really amazing talk. Now we have some time for questions. So if anyone has questions, you can put it in the chat. There's one question. Where's the source of the quote from Abdu'l-Baha?
Oh, there were many quotes from Abdu'l-Baha, so I'm not sure which one we're talking about. If they can put a little quote of it that they remember, I can find it.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about the internet is that you can literally type what you remember. Oh, the one about the mood? Oh, yeah. Okay, let me just find that myself here. But Paris Talks. That's what I think. I'm going to check it just in case. I'm pretty sure. It seemed to come up in Paris Talks, but I'm not sure. Maybe not. Yeah, it's all over the internet, so it's hard for me to.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's not the one. But I just had it memorized, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so the next question is, as the Baha'is do not have a priesthood, what's the best way to learn? Ruhi book learning can be very dependent on individual schedules.
Yeah. I mean, before we had Ruhi books, of course, even for all of us, that's the beauty of the Baha'i faith. It's independent investigation of the truth. And that's what I love, that now we have an abundance of quotations and writings and books online that we can easily just look up. So I would really encourage us to really seek that out on our own. So there may be a question that we have, like, what does the Baha'i faith think about X? And all you have to do is just look it up. I would highly encourage the Baha'i.org website, because that is, the official website of the Baha'i faith online. So that's a great resource of all the writings that we have currently. There are many that are still yet to be translated. So that's the exciting part. Sometimes we have more prayers and more meditations that come over time.
Thank you.
Someone asked about the quote about the moods to be, so this is, the quote is, "Be not the slave of your moods, but their master. But if you are so angry, so depressed, and so sore that your spirit cannot find deliverance and peace, even in prayer, then quickly go and give some pleasure to someone lowly or sorrowful, or to a guilty or innocent sufferer."
Thank you. And I see that it says the research department has found that these words were attributed to Abdu'l-Baha in an unpublished English translation of notes by Dr. Josephine Falshear in 1910. So I think that's the source.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. That's awesome.
Okay, the next question is, can you talk about the virtue of eliminating extremes of wealth and poverty?
That's a really good one. I mean, I can only give my own small thought on this. There will always be some distinctions of economic means in the world. But what we're talking about is that those extremes where some may, I mean, you get to see it every day. I don't have to explain it. But some are not even able to take care of their basic needs, and others are, just spending in large amounts. And, I'll tell you this, Baha'u'llah has said in the most holy book, which is the Kitab al-Aqdas, that you can wear fur if you want, you can eat off of gold plates if you want, but we give 10% of our the amount after we have spent whatever we want to spend on ourselves, we give 19% of that to the faith. And that is to help with the worldwide issues that may come to not just the Baha'i community, to all. So there are many humanitarian efforts that the Universal House of Justice, the National Spiritual Assembly of the United States, and the National Spiritual Assemblies worldwide, they may utilize these funds to help with the suffering that they see in the world. And so there will be economic differences between different members of the human race, but that those extremes should be eliminated. And I'll give you a beautiful example. My grandfather on my mother's side was Muslim, a devout Muslim, and he became a Baha'i. And one of the first things that he did is he realized the principle of the equality of women and men and the importance of education. And so he donated a plot of land to the village to build himself with his own hands. He was a self-taught engineer, the first school for girls, because he realized that his boys were walking to another village to get education, but his girls were at home. And so what he did was created his own school, and he knocked on all the villagers' doors and he asked for their support, and they brought the girls and he educated those girls with what he knew. And it was a one-room schoolhouse, and now it is a community college with hundreds of students, both boys and girls, in the northern part, in the cat years of Iran. So this is what I'm talking about. When we talk about education, there is also a transformation that occurs economically, as you can imagine, because we have these precious gems latent within us, right? Man is a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause these gems to reveal their splendors and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. That is a direct quote from the Baha'i writings, right? So it's when we polish these gems that we have latent within each of us, doesn't matter what our economic background is, we can then provide, we can shine these gems out into humanity and help each other grow and raise the level of our economic and material wealth as well.
Thank you. Well, what do you say to friends who want to ruminate and discuss the constant changes and upheavals in the US today as a Baha'i?
Yeah. I think what I love about the Baha'i faith is that we are asked to be eagerly concerned about the exigencies of our time. Over and over, we are asked to seek out the ills of the world and find constructive ways that we can collaborate with others who share in the same concerns of our world and find constructive ways to build new ways of thinking and new solutions. And that comes through the beautiful act of consultation, which is a very key part of Baha'i administrative life and a key part of family life. I welcome you to read about consultation, Baha'i consultation. You put your idea out and you discuss it. It's not your idea anymore. And from that, a spark of truth comes and we realize what we need to do. How do we constructively approach these ills of the world? So I ask us, if we see it, let's do something about it. And that's so easy to do. Just so that you're aware, there was an unfortunate incident of a flight that many people died in National Airport. And there was one person in an interfaith group that I'm part of said, let's do something about this. And so I worked with him and we invited 35 people within 10 days from all walks of life from all different faiths. We had a beautiful devotional gathering, and we're still in contact with each other. And these are constructive ways when we see something that is so horrendous that has happened in the world. It's just one small step that we take that help to bring people together. And unfortunately, it is in times of hardship that we become spiritually more aware, and we realize our capacities and our strengths. And that's where we can seek each other's guidance. So for those of us who are seeing what we are seeing, let's find creative ways that we can work with people who, on one hand, do believe in the unification of the world and the constructive ways of helping, and perhaps on the other hand may not believe it. Let us welcome everyone to the table to have constructive dialogue and to see to it that we become agents of change.
Thank you. How can we strike a balance between taking action to improve a difficult situation while also maintaining spiritual detachment and trust in God's plan?
Yeah, these are all very thoughtful questions. Everybody's really digesting well. It is a balance because, as you can imagine, God does not help those who don't help themselves, right? We can't just sit under a rock and pray and hope that something positive is going to come. But through that prayer, and, just so that, there are two parts, two pillars of every world religion. There is prayer and there is meditation. We also have fasting as well, and that's beautifully described in the book, the Kitab Iran. But prayer and meditation are two very different things. Prayer is when we pray to God and ask for his assistance. Meditation is where we read the writings and we glean from that how those writings can apply to our own lives. And when we do those constructively together on a regular basis, we become very in tune with how we can be more, we can expand our capabilities, and we can see the solutions in our daily lives. So that, I think, using those two methods, it's not just one, not just praying for something to happen, but then constructively looking and seeing how can I apply the principles of the faith to my life. And that's how it's been throughout humanity. Humanity has used the spiritual teachings of every world religion to guide it in its path towards a progressive society. You can see anywhere that religion has been in existence, which it has been throughout the world, not in certain regions, but throughout the world, you see a burgeoning of the arts and sciences and architecture and literature. You see how flourishing humanity has been. And that is what we're seeing right now. We are seeing how the destruction of the old world order and the creation of the new world order is happening simultaneously right in front of our eyes, because we know that, as Baha'u'llah has said, every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God is endowed with such a capacity as can instill new life into every human frame. That is a direct quote. And that is the power of what happens when a manifestation of God comes to this world.
Thank you. The next question. What advice do you have for sustaining spiritual strength over the long term, especially when facing prolonged difficulties?
Sure. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, as I said in the very beginning, we can have moments of despair, and we should allow ourselves to have those moments. I think just feeling that everything is going to go happy and joyfully is really not looking at the reality of things. And yet, Abdu'l-Baha, who suffered for 40 years of his life, being exiled, banished from his homeland in the dead of winter, coming to a prison city of Akka in Israel with his father, and such hardships that he underwent. And yet he himself said, the only prison is the prison of self. So yes, we are going to face many hardships, and we should allow ourselves to feel sad. But we should also remember that we have the strength of literally a power plant, that strength from the Holy Spirit that I said can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, and an atom into lights and suns. That is latent within each of us if we only allow that power to shine through. So we need to have that resilience. We need to have that fortitude, and that comes with being mindful of our spiritual capacities every day. That is that habit. It's not just a once a week kind of remembrance. Baha'is are asked to bring ourselves to a level where we are reminded morning and evening and throughout the day when we say our prayers that we are living in this world, not just physically, but also spiritually.
Okay, well, I think that was really, really necessary, especially in this period of spiritual rejuvenation and the fast. And we really appreciate your time today giving us this talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so in the chat, I've put the link to our YouTube channel where we're going to post this afterwards, and our mailing list if you're not already on it. And our speaker next Saturday will be Dr. Deborah Vance, and she will be talking about why people become and stay Baha'i. So these talks are every Saturday at noon Eastern time, and you can subscribe and get the link for these live sessions. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.